Morning. It's my pleasure to introduce our Sunday speaker, Mel Horvath-Lucid. Mel is a wild, creative, and lifelong learner. Mel serves as an interfaith spiritual director and ordained minister in the spiritualist tradition and works in restorative justice. With a focus on how we can do things differently toward love, toward peace, toward healing, Mel's work centers around building bigger spaces for awareness, realness, and belonging, with self-acceptance as the bridge. Welcome, Mel.
Good morning. It's great to be here. It's going to get my slides set up. Beautiful. So this morning I wanted to talk on a powerful pause and to really invite you into the practices. There's many, and I want to name that it became challenging to look at all the deconstruction of what it takes to pause. And yet I did find myself going back to a few tools over and over again. And so those are the ones that I'm going to lean into today. The first one I want to talk about is abiding breath. An abiding breath is different than this sort of disconnected idea we have of breathing. But abiding breath is when we come back into awareness of breath as a faithful friend. When we think about the very nature of breath or air as an element, it's an essential element in our world and ourselves, and it's ever present, ever there when we breathe in and when we breathe out. It's also this incredible reminder of our interconnectedness to ourselves, to one another, to everything. That the same air that is moving through me is moving through you, is moving through beings, through plants, through oceans, through water. It is everywhere. It's actually a powerful idea to think about how connected we are. And so the breath really in its essence brings us back into the body. I think about surgeries that I've had, and one of the key pieces that I noticed is that they would talk after about the importance of breath and deep breathing every hour, delivering essential, necessary oxygen to all your cells. It's an act of self-care, and yet so many times we can find ourselves disconnected from breath, shallow breathing, quickly breathing, or completely unaware that we're breathing. And so breath really is a guide back into our parasympathetic system. And our parasympathetic system, put simply, is that system of ease within our body. It doesn't mean that everything that is challenging us right now to, quote, hold our breath isn't there. It's that we choose to be in it with breath. We choose to become aware of the inhale and the exhale. The second we do, we shift the way that we breathe. The cadence and flow shift. For me, I like to visualize the lake and the waves that come in as the inhale, and the exhale, the ways for which the water, the breath retreat back out. Breath is also this really simple reminder that everything expands and contracts. This expansion and contraction continues all the time, whether we're aware of it or unaware. We expand and we contract. And sometimes we become aware of the expansion and it grows. And sometimes we're focused on the contraction and we feel that squeeze and that tightness, only to find once again the inhale and the exhale. The practice of being with breath in what is, of steadying that, of moving with it, brings us back into awareness with our bodies in a different way. It also supports our ability to be with what is and slow it down. It's the act of aligning or centering to come back in, to return to home, to ourselves, to our bodies. So the invitation is to think about where breath could be added. And so for me, it is as simple as slowing down to add breath in challenging moments, to slow down and add breath to mundane tasks, to slow down and add breath before I sip a tea, before I speak a word, before I jump to a conclusion, before I make meaning. That breath, taking a beat, as it were, shifts things, it changes things. It sounds simple, but for many of us, we know that we can get very disconnected from our awareness of our breath. Another piece that I want to talk about is the ticking clock. So time really is a worthy companion, a worthy relationship to explore, how we view time and what we think about time. I wrote this poem probably in the winter of 2021. It says this: time marches on, and one of our greatest deceptions is convincing ourselves that it won't end. We often fail to notice that time continues to move forward even if the clock appears still. It never goes back, it simply moves round and round, never the same, yet returns and repeats. We learn like gears grinding or gliding effortlessly. We learn or we don't. The clock now sits on the dining room table, its gears and innards spread across it. It will never return to the same state again. As we sit with that idea, it can sound harsh, it can sound challenging. You might have whatever feelings you have about that. But there's been a few things that I've noticed and learned about time. The first one is that it's beautifully studied that those of us that are aware that life is born with death, that these things are connected, tend to be happier. In part because we tend to be aware that this life is literally a glimmer, a moment, a space for us to be in that will then shift and change again. So those of us that are aware of that tend to lean into the possibility of what presence, what beauty life can offer us right now in this moment where we are, where we find ourselves right now. To know that things go round and round, but never the same. They return and repeat, but never the same, is part of where I think there's wisdom that can get us caught. Because oftentimes we want to go back to where something was different, but it isn't that way anymore. We are not the same as before. And so that can feel really, really sad, or it can feel possibility rich, because the reality is sometimes I will find myself feeling like I'm going around the same mountain or returning to the same spot. And it has been extraordinarily helpful to me to know that I'm not returning to something that feels familiar, the same as I was before. The me in the breaths, the lives, the years, the moments that has lived since then is different than before. It means I am navigating potentially what feels like the same challenge anew. So there's possibility in this reframe of time. So I invite you to consider your relationship with time, how you view time, what role that plays in the cultivation of gratitude, joy, moments of pleasure, and moments of connection within whatever is right now. The ticking clock for me especially recently, I spoke last time about some health challenges, has really become aware in this way. I read a book and it was 8 steps for managing chronic illness. And one of the thinking barriers that this author talks about is that most people who come in say, I want to, what are you hoping for in this? I want to either A, go back to the way it was before, or B, I want to cure this. And what she talked about was the possibility of living well right now with those things that are achy or pain, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, whether it's a spiritual or on a multitude of layers, to be with that and to add joy, to be with that and to see the things around you that are holding you. It's oftentimes easy to see the thing that's challenging. And I'm not suggesting that you don't see that. I'm suggesting that it's powerful to hold that and to start to build out a practice that allows you to see more of the picture, more of the gift of breath that is abiding, more of the gift of nature in all its fullness, in all its ways, including the snow falling, in the gift of the simplest things that we often miss because we're speeding by, or because we're so narrowed in on a thing that we're not seeing more of the things again. Little more about time. There's at least 2 dimensions of time. We have the objective. This is the ticking clock, the seconds, the days, the weeks, the months, the year. This allows us some language to share with each other about where we're at, orientation-wise, and what might be going on. But we also know there's the subjective feeling of time, the feeling of each moment, the second where your whole life changes, or the way that being in flow can make you forget time altogether. We know those. We know the conversations that feel like moments, but it's been lasting for hours. We know love that is an experience of love that is so immersive that a lifetime feels like a moment. That subjective time is part of realizing how we cultivate the robustness within the seconds, weeks, months, and years. It's a measurement within us. We know when we're in alignment with ourselves, and we know when we're out of flow, when the slog is there. So if we weren't trying to remove what is, instead, we would be adding more of what cultivates that feeling of flow, the subjective relationship with time. Applying time to the pause allows other pieces to change, form, dissolve, allowing us to become more aware of what's really going on with us and around us. It invites us deeper into the unknown, and we have a resistance to the unknown. We want to have certainty. We want to land. That's human. That's okay. That's to be honored. And as I have learned how to apply time and pause and allow other things to form and dissolve, it has allowed me to watch, to witness, to see what is around me. And it has allowed me to trust where things are at. This is challenging because we want people to do what we want them to do. But if we are not living a life where we write the script of what other people should say and do, and then push and push for them to say and do those things, we would be doing something else. We would be looking at what we are saying and what we are doing. And we would be looking at the natural flow that will inevitably connect us to one another. It is what brought every single one of us here this morning. And we start to lean into those places of flow. There's a tension or a piece. So there's 2 ways that we tend to change. Time is one of them. The other one is the fire element. And it tends to be a changer. It's often accompanied with emotions like anger And this initiatory emotion, oftentimes, again, we seek to resist that feeling. And I rather think about it more as an initiator. It's not where we're meant to stay, but it does, if we listen carefully, call us back toward our sense of what is okay and not okay. Essentially, it calls us back into our boundaries. And those boundaries then are what we can create. And again, they move and they change. And that's this tricky thing, is that we have to choose to grow in a way that we choose to move with the breath and choose to live our lives in the same way. That there is more, that things can change, and that the where it is right now, here's how I would like to position myself or associate myself with that thing or that experience or that person based on where it is right now. And certainly things can change and I can change, but right now, this is where I'm at. So the key with this is, and again, hopefully this helps to sort of articulate why one would find themselves resisting this, is to choose to look at more of the picture, is to choose to look at more of ourselves. And so I remember a quote that says, when we build a wall instead of a boundary, we don't just keep the things we don't want out, we keep love out too. Likewise with choosing to see the picture, if we only want to see a part of that picture, then we will only see a piece of ourselves. So I want to say that again. If we only want to see a part of the picture, and what that sounds like in my practice is that people will say, yeah, Mel, but I want to be just incredibly sad right now. I just want to be incredibly angry right now. Okay, well then that will be what you hold. And I'm not suggesting you don't do that. And I'm not suggesting you don't feel that fully. All I'm simply suggesting is that within that thing that is that you are holding, that you just turn it slightly and open it up so that it can be there with more of the things that support us. When we do that, we start to bring back our toolkit of things that help hold us, help us remain present and responsive to those challenging things. When we do that, we also start to see more of who we are interacting. We see more of the picture, more of the people, more of the space. It's actually an incredibly empowering process, but it does mean that you'll end up looking at parts of yourself that you wish weren't there. One of my teachers, Rev. Angel Kyoto Williams, says this: we need to develop the habit of seeing ourselves in others. And if we can't see this self, then we can't see other self. And so when we shift the way that we think about the pieces of us, and instead we offer them generosity, that, like I said last time, perhaps this piece is seeking to protect this other piece. Okay, what does it actually need? When we meet ourselves with what is, with a sense of responsiveness and care and compassion and joy and curiosity, we start to see the transformation happen naturally. I don't know if you have heard the concept of let them, but the concept of let them is one that I have it actually tattooed on my hand. I got it done a few years ago now. And let them theory is a theory from Mel Robbins. And it's basically, in short, instead of letting emotion drive your actions, you can witness the emotion, understand its origin, and then choose your response. So the let them theory is about, she articulates, if your friends all go away on a weekend to a cabin and they don't invite you, let them. And I pause there to let us feel what that would feel like, but that would really hurt me. I'd want them to not do that. Well, when we try to change people, manipulate it, we can never actually quite connect into what is. Instead, we could say, hey, my friends went on a weekend without me. And let ourselves feel that. Let ourselves decide what we want to do with that, and watch and notice what happens. It can be challenging to meet things where they're at. That's why we write stories. That's why we say, that just can't be. And it can cause struggle or suffering within us, rather than simply letting something be the way that it is, and then slowing things down to be more present with more of what that feels like or connects in with us. For me, it's been noticing that some of the ways that I want to interact with people, my own way of friendship, doesn't actually have me wanting to do certain activities if we're, yeah. And so noticing that it can feel lovely to be invited, but it's also noticing what it is I would want to participate in. So again, that idea of knowing self as it interacts with one another. The let them theory also says the location of power is not in changing the world, but rather in knowing, communicating with, and healing oneself. A step further would be to say, I am responsible for my thoughts, words, and actions. And absolutely, we can have experiences in our lives that really, really impact, really impact us. And so it isn't about blaming, shaming, or coming at ourselves for our thoughts, words, and actions. It's simply about being reflective to the space where I know that I hold power. It isn't in changing the world, but rather in being able to know this person and hold responsibility for how I show up, what I say, and what I do. That practice is a challenging one. And it's why the book Let Them theory is so big right now, is because it's actually where the change comes. It calls us to grow our capacity for conflict, discomfort, and the undesired, not toward endurance though. So sometimes we think, oh, so I'm supposed to just grow my ability to take a hit, to be uncomfortable, to be in the undesired and endure that. But there's a different texture that can come from it, and it is acceptance. It is where we see the thing and we also see ourselves in connection with that, and we see that we have choicefulness and we can relocate ourselves. This is an act of empowerment. It does call us, though, to do something. The thing that for me, I'm going to try to succinctly as possible explain this piece. When we come back into feeling in a world that tells us not to feel, we will learn how to hold more of our emotions, and we'll learn how to utilize those towards intuition, towards higher wisdom, towards data that can help us navigate our lives. This sensitivity must also be held with equanimity. This is a strength or a capacity to be with challenging things. What I notice sometimes is that we think that growing capacity for conflict, discomfort, and undesired experiences is more about saying, yeah, so I don't go near anything that causes conflict, discomfort, or is undesired. And I would hold that with tenderness to say a few things. There was a time in my queer coming out journey where it made sense for me to spend time more exclusively in queer community, where I could figure out who I was. I could explore what that meant. But eventually, the call, particularly if one desires to grow their capacity, was back into mixed spaces with lots of different people. And sometimes that wound that we have from those experiences causes us to stop at, I won't go near anything like that again. And the growth potential is when we say, I understand myself enough. I notice when I'm at capacity, but I also understand that we cannot heal relationship wounds outside of relationship. So at some point we are called to go back into the discomfort, back into the conflict. And again, generative conflict, not degenerative conflict. So boundary settings are a piece of this, but our capacity to allow the things that are uncomfortable to us to be there, that is the call to stretch. Part of how we do that, and what I value about Mel Robbins' work, is that she articulates, hey, this theory, this let them theory, comes from radical acceptance, which is a Buddhist philosophy. And suffering often comes from wanting things to be different than how they are. And so what she suggests is the simple words, let them, allows you to be able to navigate this in modern life. So radical acceptance, for me, how I articulate this, is that sometimes we'll avoid saying where we are on the map. We'll avoid point A of where we are because we just want to get to point B. The challenge is, without locating yourself where you are, it's really, really tough to pinpoint the next location, right? That makes sense. If I'm mapping something, I would map from where I am to where I want to go. The resistance to where I am slows down my ability to be with it in such a way that it will naturally start to shift and change. I'll go on a ride that I didn't even pin and get to a new spot. That's the power of this, is that we can change our location in part by acknowledging our location. So just simply in acknowledging where we are, hey, that was really hard for me. This thing really, really is there, and it's impacting me. And so when we start to look at these in pieces, we start to see how the powerful pause comes together. So I want to invite you into a time, or a longer time, of meditation. I want to invite you first to become more aware of your body, to come back to abiding breath, to notice your inhale and your exhale. For some, you might close your eyes. For others, you may actually keep them open. In the Vajrayana tradition of Buddhism, eyes are open. And part of the philosophy around that is to soften the gaze, but to simply allow the light of what is to be there. Maybe noticing your feet rooted on the ground, maybe imagining roots growing down into the center of the earth, maybe imagining the top of your head connected to the infinite universe. Simply through breath, simply through breathing, simply through being present. Allowing the texture of waves, the inhale as the water comes toward, the exhale as it moves away. Perhaps it captures and takes some sand with it as it goes, revealing what is underneath. Simply allowing more of what is there to be there. Witnessing the action of breath, noticing. Opening to curiosity, noticing. In this place of breath, maybe allowing something to come to mind that's not too uncomfortable for you, but it's just uncomfortable. It's there right now and it's uncomfortable. Simply inviting that thing that is there to be noticed, to just see it. You're not going to do anything about it. You're not solving that. Just being present. That thing, you find it uncomfortable. Maybe noticing where in your body you feel it. Now applying a choicefulness towards things that are also present right now, that offer you comfort. Maybe they show up as a sensation in your body, a visual picture, a feeling, but allowing those things that bring you comfort to also be there. Perhaps inviting visions, pictures or sensations of people who bring you comfort and joy. And just simply being in the energy, noticing what comes up and not limiting it to people, perhaps all beings. What comes to mind when you think about all beings? Nothing that's uncomfortable, it's there, it's okay. And inviting in space and room for all those beings that you find connected. And as you hold that energy, maybe drawing it back to your own heart, that heart that beats, whether you notice it or not, whether you thank it or not, that heart that takes and processes all that you inhale. And perhaps exhaling, just giving gratitude for yourself, for your body, for your mind, for your emotions, for your ability to make it through 100% of everything you've experienced to be here right now. To be in what is and to notice maybe it wasn't what we would have imagined, but here we are and look at it. To choose to see the beauty in the infinite universe that is above us and the deep and abundant earth that surrounds us. The beauty in water, fire, air, earth, and the beauty in space. Space for me is the pause. It is also the infinite universe that reminds us that beyond that galaxy is another galaxy. It's the Milky Way. There is more. There is more to me. There is more to you. And when we start to see that, it is contradictory to what we believe. We start to see more of how powerful we are in all of the things that are present. I'll close today with a poem that I wrote called To Let. To allow something to be broken, to acknowledge the mess and chaos, to remain unsure, to lean into the discomfort, to recognize that life is a myriad of experiences, and what we prefer to ignore still exists both within and outside of ourselves. We write our stories, we create our contexts, we learn, we grow, and we gain understanding, we change. We write a new story again based on the lessons of what we've learned before. But I am not simply my story. My experiences are subjective. And in sharing them, I can come to understand new truths, the many stained glass views of others looking back, seeing in tones and shades that are different from my own. And then I see anew, in new colors, in a fresh understanding with new eyes, gaining wisdom rooted in truth. We rise to write a new story with the understanding that each of us holds a pen this time. We write, we erase, we build up, and we tear down. And we must choose to own that. We do not own the story, yet we are part of it. We are not separate. In the act of writing and erasing, building and tearing down, we see how connected we truly are. When I wrote this piece, I just found out that my belief that there was three primary colors was different than that of the mantis shrimp. The mantis shrimp has more lenses, more eyes to see, and can see 13 primary colors. It's moments like that that I'm so glad that I know I don't know, that I can hold on to the more of what is there. That's where the possibility lies. Thank you.
Mel, can you come back on screen? I want to thank you. You opened with an invitation to focus on our breath without telling us to do so. I appreciated that. And then the sharing of your poems and the book, Let Them, all powerful and inspirational. I had to pull myself back into focus in order to be after the meditation. So I'm grateful for your sharing today. And let's close this portion of our conversation with a treatment. Focusing on the inspiration we've just received, the divine intelligence in the form of Mel that expressed, that brought different ideas, different perspectives that allowed us to perceive something that we may not have previously. Recognizing that co-creative power that was shared with us and that we are sharing as well. For as we contemplate what is shared, it changes us. And in the changing, each of us expands in awareness. There is a flow of energy exchange. That is the expression of the divine as us. The expression of joy, of contemplation, the expression of curiosity, the expression of moving in the flow, the waves, the water, being part of all that is. Recognizing that for me to have choice, all has choice. It may be that we don't make the same choices. We don't have the same preferences, but it is required, if there is choice, that there is a freedom of choice. So my preference and my expectations cannot be imposed. I can offer an invitation, as has been done here, to see other perspectives. But choice is each of us, and choice is what we are allowed and do naturally and effortlessly, and oftentimes unconsciously and habitually. So what's been offered, the invitation today, is to look at our life from an experience of love and allowing, of recognizing that events and experiences are what we tell stories about, and that those stories are ours to tell or reshape or reform. That life is this opportunity, life is this invitation, that just as divine is breathing each of us, divine is flowing through, that we always have the opportunity to raise our thoughts, raise our awareness, and become that greater divine expression that is a natural state for each. Love points the way, law makes the way possible, and this is possible for every single individualization of the divine that is in expression at this time. I allow it to be so, for this is a demand upon that law. It reveals itself in the lives of each of us. And what is expressing here as this energy, this love, this peace, is flowing from the focal point of this Sunday gathering to expand and flow and enfold. I let it be so with joy, with gratitude. It unfolds under grace in perfect ways. I accept and allow. And I accept with grace, with love, with peace. It's done in mind, and it is my life now. I let it be so. And as I do, it is. And so it is.
Now I'll offer you an opportunity to financially support your spiritual home, CSL on the Lake. Let's begin with our abundance affirmation. Together, please. Is the slide coming up, Sharon? Thank you. So together, as I give, so I receive. My good now flows to me in a steady, unbroken, ever-increasing stream of success, happiness, and abundance. I am blessed. Blessings abound for all life everywhere. I am grateful. The ways to give. It's a charitable organization. We offer many ways for you to support your spiritual community. E-transfer to admin@cslonthelake.com. Click donate on our website, cslonthelake.com, or mail a check to Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, 20 Bonnie Lynn Court, Toronto, Ontario, M1K3A.